Alright, today I'm going to do my movie review of Umma, which means mother in Korean, right? Now, the story is about this Korean woman, and she's um, in this, in America, and she has this beekeeping business, basically, and she has a daughter, and it gives flashbacks of how she was raised by her mother and things like that, right? Which includes electrical shock, but not like psych ward or anything, but where the mother would actually electrocute her own daughter to make her kind of suffer the way she was, right? That's not good, but anyway. So, um, that's basically the beginning of the story, and her mother's brother comes over from Korea because she died. And in Korea, they have this tradition where you offer food and stuff to the dead. Now, being a Christian, I don't do that, but I don't tell other people what to do. But I would make this point: a spirit can't eat, but a human being who's alive can. Now, if you do that tradition, and it's a tradition, right? Certain things, right, matter and certain things don't. Mm-hmm. But only the living can eat food, right? And need food to eat, right? The dead or the spirit world, right, which we cannot see here, right, do not, right, need anything to eat. Now, the problem is, like I told you, if something made us, we don't even know how it made us, right? We only know it did. And according to Paul, Jesus is the firstborn of every creature, right? This is what you can't get past, right? Not Satan, but Jesus, right? And the problem is there's two trees in Eden, and one you can eat of and one you can't, because if you eat of its fruit, it'll kill you, and fruit's a metaphor for works. And you also have to do an evil work, right? And believe you did something wrong, right? To be able to die from eating of the tree's fruit, right? The tree also has to die somehow, right? Do not trees die when you cut them down too, right? In fact, you can pick a flower, right, like a rose, right, and it'll wither and die, right? Well, the same is true with a tree if you chop it down. That's why the Bible talks of all this. Everything in this ecosystem is dying for some reason, and that has to do with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Now, some say, not all, that the tree was the human body of Satan himself, who the Gnostics call Nas. Naas. I'm not talking about Little Nas, the rapper. It's spelled differently, I think. I think his is one A. By the way. But the point is, okay, when you're in the world, you have freedoms, right? You have rules, right? You have things you can do and things you can't do, right? Those are the basic rules of any society, right? It's like a speeding ticket when you go too fast, right? Because we have a bunch of people driving on the road, you gotta drive like you have a head on your shoulders and not like a maniac trying to catch your girlfriend or your wife cheating on you or something, right? Because if she is, that's your fault. If she ain't, you should be treating her right anyway. And that's the problem, right? But anyway, getting back to the subject, right, of offering food or things to the dead, right? Some people do that, right? It doesn't mean anything, right? But the food, if no one eats it, will also what? Rot. Now, it's not God eating it or the Spirit eating it, right? It's something that's decaying the world, right? It's affecting the whole universe, it seems. It seems like the stars are waxing old like a garment, according to the Psalms, right? Uh-oh. And we have what's called supernovas now, right? And black holes. Right. Some death, right, is affecting everybody that we die. And it's not the tree of life that died. Or if it did die, it could be resurrected, right? If you get the point about Jesus, right? But the tree of the knowledge and evil, of good and evil, if it died, it's still dead, right? From the moment it died, right? And its death is causing the death of everything else on the planet, right? But you don't understand how that can be, right? Because of something in the spirit world as well, not the physical world, right? And it has a lot to do with your judgment towards each other and how you judge or forgive each other as well. Now, the worst thing you can do is condemn a human being for doing the same thing you want to do, right? According to Christ, right? Now, if someone forgives your debt, you're to forgive someone else's debt. That's another part of his message, right? Now, it's God who's trying to forgive our sins, right? And Satan is trying to get us to sin with him and his angels, right? So they're causing the confusion we're going through right now. So whatever you're doing, right, is, something you have a tradition of doing. And we're not to judge each other, but, if that's part of your culture, whatever, right? Again, right? If you do that, you do that. If you don't, you don't, right? And that's the point, too, right? Though if an American who doesn't have that tradition marries into a Korean family or something, he would have to understand that tradition, right? Again, right? That's called compromise, right? All right? Now, some things you can compromise with someone on and some things you can't, right? And like I said, I'm disabled, so I'm dealing with something that happened in the military that I'm trying to explain to you, right? So basically, the story goes on, and the mother is brought back to her daughter, who she kind of tortured, right? And the mother has to make peace with her, at least in her mind, right? Right. So that she don't do her own daughter the same way that she was done, right? And that's the point. And, one of the things is, though, the mother could also nut up on her new daughter, her own daughter, right? The same way her mother nutted up on her, right? And blame her because of bad behavior being kind of hereditary too, right? You're one with your parents, right? And if they're rebellious, right, there's a good chance you'll be rebellious with them. Though God also acknowledges some children or some human beings can see the evil they're doing and repent of it, so he also gives you that way out, right? The rest is your choice. So the movie stars Sandra Oh and Dylan McDermott. I think he's not the guy from um Ally McBeal, I think, or one of them, right? Which one was it? The one by David E. Kelly, right? Who's on Law and Order uh, with Christopher Meloni, right? But it's a different guy, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, and um, so that's the basic genesis of the story, right? So they're trying to appease her mother so that, again, right, she can cross on over or whatever, right? Which is what, some people would call it as well. Mm-hmm. And make it on into paradise, right? So whatever. I mean, we all have different belief systems, and you can't tell people what to believe. You can only introduce them to your own belief, right? And you can't force them, right? That ain't why Jesus came, right? He came to show you love and forgiveness, right? And as Satan showing us judgment, hatred, and condemnation, right? All three. And revenge. Now, a problem with a vigilante is sometimes they'll go off on a tangent even if the person didn't really do something wrong, or try to make the person do something wrong, and then it's that person's fault. You're trying to entrap them, right? You can't do that with God and Jesus either, right? It's kind of like Job, right? Bad things can happen to good people sometimes, but a good person knows they're not trying to do something wrong, right? But something bad is happening to them from the devil. Mm-hmm. And that can happen to you too, right? Now, the devil can just be any human being who wants to be a butt to you, right? In a way. It's kind of as simple as that, right? But it's also complicated, right? Like I told you before, if I learn something and you don't know it, I still got to try to tell you, but I'm not here to condemn you for it, right? So what I'm telling you has to do with that, not you, right? If I understand something and you don't, or you were shown something different, if I understand it and I'm trying to explain it to you, and you're pretending you don't understand it, that's up to you, right? But if I do, right, and you just pretend you don't, that's still on you, right? I'm not condemning you for it. Satan is. But if God and Jesus want you to know it, after a while you're condemning yourself with Satan, and I can't do nothing about that. My job is to try and explain it to you, yeah. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't want to understand it, right? But whether you do or not, I do, right? So I'm more responsible for it than you are. Mm-hmm. That's why I gotta say something, right? Or your blood will be on my hands, right? So by forgiving the woman caught in the act of adultery, who was first called a wife, because adultery means that a wife is sleeping with another man who isn't her husband in some form, right? Now they bring her to Jesus. The question is, was Jesus her husband to be even involved with it? That's the question. The story don't tell you who her husband was, though she's brought to Jesus for some reason, right? and asked what to do with her. Now, all Jesus could have done with her is tell them what the law of Moses says. Because, see, if they caught her in the act, where's the man, right, she was with? You're to stone them both according to Moses' law, which is what they were saying. Such as her should be stoned, right? But also the man, right, is to be stoned with her, right? You can't stone one or the other. And act like that's better when both of them sin, right? Moses' law says also that her husband is to pick up the first stone to stone her, right? And, right, to stone them both. And, right, why did they bring her to Jesus in the first place if she wasn't his wife, right? Y'all don't know, because he also forgave her at the end, right? And told her to go and sin no more, right? Now, Mark mentions that 7 devils were cast out of Mary, right? Magdalene, right? Well, they asked Christ a parable about a woman who had 7 husbands, right? First one died, and all 7 had her to wife, right? And again, whose wife is she in the resurrection, right? Well, one, the resurrection has nothing to do with sex, no, right? Though Luke says in the world to come, but that don't make sense, because we're sexual creatures, right? God made you sexual. He made us male and female to fill the earth, to be fruitful and multiply, and subdue it, and replenish it, right? Replenish means to refill. Now, Isaiah says this in chapter 45. World without end. What do you think that means? And you're replenishing the world, right? You keep having to remake it because the crazy human beings keep destroying it, so there you go. Right? Now, the problem is, though, we're in darkness of what's going on around us, not just caused by our following of Satan, but caused by the ignorance of men who don't even want to know. Because the thing is, even if I understand something and you don't, and I'm the only one to understand it this way, right, I still can't make you understand it the same way. And if more people don't understand it, right, and only I do, I'm the only one to understand it that way. Which still don't make me wrong. And it don't make you right. Either, right. It's just what I see in the Bible, and I'm telling you, you're being lied to about it, and that's all I can do, right? And I'm showing you things in the Old Testament that even I didn't learn until I read the Bible 5 times in the 90s, right? After I got out the Navy, right? From about 96 to 98, right? I basically spent 3 years reading the Bible on my own. And not listening to men anymore like Paul. In Galatians chapter 1, he tells you he went to Arabia for 3 years and studied the scriptures. Right? Hello? That's why they show you Isaiah 53 and Psalms 22 has to do with Jesus and not David or Isaiah's own family. Right? Though he had one, right? And he did have a wife who he went unto, and she did conceive and bore him a son, right? But the son he's talking about is called Emmanuel, with us God, right? That's his name, right? He's also called Yeshua or Yahushua, bearing the name of the Father, Yahuwah, right? Or Eliyahu and Moshe, right? Also Sar and Sarah, Yisrael and Sarah. All these names showed me the divine name Yahuwah. Not Jehovah, right? But Yahuwah. But if I'm the only one to see it, I'm the only one to see it, right? I can't make other people see it, but tell you I do and why. But even if you don't, I'm not here to condemn you any more than Jesus did if he told this to the disciples before he left, right? Now, if you read Luke, right, he first opened their understanding of the Old Testament and how it applied to him, right? And some of that tradition was lost with the Orthodox taking over the church from the Gnostics, right? Because, see, the Gnostics were basically winning in the popularity area of Christianity for the first 3 centuries until Constantine got involved. And once Constantine got involved, things became murky, and out came the doctrine of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, right? Ignoring that God calls us all his children, right? Now, we are called Elohim by King David himself, right? I have said ye are gods and children of the Most High, right? Now, here, children is Beni, right? Right. It's been with a Y. That's why they interpret it as children, right? Now, Ben is son, and Bat is daughter. But you can also, like Sarah, do Ben Ah, probably, right? And with no real problem with Moses. And even he said there would come a prophet after him, which we Christians hold as Jesus, right? Now, Jesus is trying to explain all this during the 40 days before he goes up into heaven, right? Too, right. Now, that don't mean, though, that everyone listened to him. Especially Peter and the other 10, right? Because only one disciple was with the women in front of the cross, and that's because of his age, he wasn't really a threat, right? Now, the thing is, Paul did say 500 men, though, saw Christ after he was crucified, right? Now, the Jews would have you believe, though, right, that they stole the body of Christ Sunday night, right? Well, technically Saturday night, right? Because, see, Passover ends in Jewish tradition the evening of Saturday, right? And starts Thursday or even Friday, right? Depending on when the feast actually went through, right? Now, they prepare for it, which is called the preparation, right? And then they eat the feast on Passover, right, itself, which is the holiday. And you can also have it on a different day, and a regular Sabbath after, right? And it can be up to 2 days, right? At least, right? Now, if Christ is put on the tomb, say Thursday, before Thursday evening, right? And is resurrected by Sunday morning, how many days is that? 3. Actually, it's 2.5, right? Technically. But again, right? Because he's put in the tomb Thursday evening, by Thursday evening, right? Friday he's in the tomb, and Saturdays he's in the tomb, and by morning he's resurrected, right? That's 2.5 days. Hello? I know. Technically, it's, let's see, 48 hours is 2 days. So, another 12 to 48 is what? 50, 60, 60 hours, right? Because Mary is the first to see him anyway, I know, according to John, right? Now, according to Matthew, right? Okay, she goes and gets Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, right? And they go back to the tomb, right? And have a vision of the angel descending and opening the tomb, I guess, right? Because see, one's out of order, right? I know. One, the tomb's already open. When Mary gets there, right? That's John, right? In Matthew, the angel is descending, right? And opens the tomb for them, right? And they find the tomb open, right? Well, one of these is a vision, right? The women had, right? Because you cannot physically, right, see an angel, right? They're in the spirit realm, right? Now, what it represents, though, is the spirit of Jesus perhaps returning to his body, I don't know, right? And resurrecting from the dead, right? Yeah, right, possible, right? And then in Luke and Mark, they see two angels, I think, right? One sitting on one end and the other, right? And then somewhere in John, she sees Jesus for the first time, though he tells her, "Do not yet touch me," right? Now, is how he words it in the Greek that's important, right? It doesn't mean at all, because the women also in Matthew grab him by the feet. That's to prove he's alive, silly. Right? And resurrected. Right, right. Now, you could get confused because there's a lot of confusion going on too, right? Even within the group of the disciples, right? So again, you got to figure out how it all fits together into one story too, right? Right. But mainly it's the women, right? Interacting right, with Jesus until he meets the two in the country, right? Who just walk with him a certain distance, right? And he opens to them the scriptures during this time, right? So it's a few hours probably too, right? And again, he again does it with the other disciples, right? At least the 11, right? They don't become 12 again until Matthias, and even with Paul, they're 13, right? Though again, Paul tells you more about Christ first, and then they write the Gospels, right? And then they write their own letters, and then the last book to be written is Revelations, right? While John is on Patmos, right? But John is more the eyewitness and the only male witness to see Christ on the cross. And he changed his word, right, for Christ's chest, right, area. Now, when you're crucified, you're naked from at least the waist up. If you have female breasts, that's when it would be known, right? And not before then either. And only one of the disciples, the youngest, by the way, sees him on the cross, right? With the women, right? The rest of them don't see it, right? Though he might have tried to tell them, I don't know. So like I said, right, it's all trying to figure it all out, right? Now, the thing is, Christianity can also be used as a tool of the devil to get you to not become a Christian. Because, see, some of these Christians are acting like the devil and pretend they're acting like Jesus, right? And they're not. And they're not. See, that's the problem. Satan even tempted Jesus to sin too, right? And he twisted the scriptures to try and get Jesus to jump off the Temple Mount, right? That's why you got to listen to every jot and tittle, right, in the Word of God, right? Every word is in there for a reason, right? Including you shall suck the female breasted kings, right? Because there Isaiah uses a certain word, right, that's associated with females, and he's talking about the milk of the Gentiles, right? I know. Which has to do with nursing a child, right? I know. And says you will suck the breast of kings, right? Using shad there, right? Well, shad is the same word used with a woman, right, nursing a child, right? So you can only use one breast at a time. Yeah. Or you can go back and forth if you want to, right? Like one for breakfast, you can do one breast, and lunch the other breast, and back and forth if you want, right? You can't do that either. But a child can only suckle one breast at a time. You know what I mean, right? That's what shad means, right? Now, the term Shaddai could also apply to female breasts, right? That's another thing men seal and don't want to look upon. Right? So all I can do is try to tell you they're sealing it, right? And what that means, right? Some say it means mountain, right? But the root word is shad, right? And there's another way to spell female breast in the Hebrew, which is with a Y. Is Shaddai, right? Or Shadi, right? It's spelled S-H-D-Y. It can also have a hard K at the end, right? And it's called Shadiak, right? Right? Moses and the prophets spell it differently, right? Now, Moses uses it in Genesis when Jacob is blessing his sons, right? Right. And the term Shaddai is used before that, right? But the other prophets use Shad, right? Now, the Songs of Solomon goes back and forth and uses different words for female breasts, right? Two. But the Song of Solomon is describing a woman pining for Solomon, right? Her lover, right? And wanting him to come back. Now, as far as we know, they're lovers, but she may not have had a child yet with him either, right? Because she calls herself a wall, but not a door, right? Well, a door is how you enter into the sheepfold like Christ through Mary, right? This is why Mary is important as the daughter of faith, that Christ was able to come through her, right, in the first place. Now, like I told you before, there's only one way, in reality, right, or two ways, right, a woman who doesn't know a man can have a child, right? One is if she herself is a true hermaphrodite and conceives her own son, right? The other way is if Jesus is literally the angel of the Lord who went before Israel, right? And again, right, became an embryo to grow in the womb of the Virgin Mary and became Jesus himself, right? Now, this angel, though, has appeared throughout the Old Testament. Joshua calls him the captain of the Lord of hosts, right? Samson's family saw him too, and he even ascended up to heaven in the sacrifice of the burnt offering. And that's part of what he told Mary after she saw him, right? He ascends to the God, and he will again ascend to the God, right? Of them. Twice, he tells him, right? Now, like I told you, he said, "Do not yet touch me, for I have ascended to my Father in heaven, and I ascend again." Right. Go and tell my brethren. Right. Basically, that's what he's saying. Right. And then when she goes and gets Mary, he lets her and Mary touch him on the feet. Right. To prove he's resurrected. Right. And then maybe they get Salome, whoever she is, and a few other women. Right. Right. And that's how the resurrection started. Right. With the women. Right. And then Cleopas and his friend, right, who could be the author, we don't know, right, could be Mark himself, right, because he's not named, right, and usually the gospel, good news according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is the author of who wrote it, right. Yeah. According to, right. So again, right. Yet Christians can act like the devil too. That's the problem, right? Now, if you're not acting like Jesus, there's only one other person you can be acting like. Right, too. Now, how is Jesus? Humble, forgiving, considerate. Even on the cross, he says, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." Right. You, on the other hand, are trying to condemn the homosexuals, the gay, the straight, the bi. Right. You even condemn your own marriage when you condemn the gays for wanting to marry too, right? The reason is we all marry and are given marriage, right? You can marry someone in arranged marriage or a one night stand, and it's still the same act, right? The thing is, even David kind of had more than one wife, right? He had a few outside of Jerusalem, between 6 to 7, 10 virgins in Jerusalem. That's what Jesus is talking about, the 10 virgins in Matthew, by the way. Whoops. And 5 of them were wise and 5 of them were foolish, right? And it also has to do with Absalom, too, right? I know. See, he also slept with his father's virgins in Jerusalem, right? So you're not reading all the Bible. By far. I'm the only one I know who's talking about the subject matter I'm talking about in the Bible, and no one else is about it. Same way. And that's all I can do is try to talk about it, right? Now again, like the song says, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden. Now that garden is Eden, idiot. In the Garden of Eden, it's supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, right? I don't know. Now the problem is, we all act like morons learning to build ourselves to hell. Again and again. And that will eventually bring us back to Eden, I guess. Slowly. As we destroy our planet from within. With the nukes and all that, right? You can do that, right? Now, there again, like every nation has targets, right? On their foreheads, right? they're going to target the bigger cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, New Orleans, right? Which are considered also the most corrupt cities, right? I know. Atlanta, right? Savannah's kind of 50-50, but I don't know. But it's not as big as Atlanta, right? See, that if they're going to target a city, it's going to be a major metropolitan area, right? And they're not going to target the minor cities, right? Or the boroughs or the small towns, right? They're trying to take out the main people who they feel are the problem, right? Too. That's why even Nostradamus is rumored to have talked about New York, right? And stuff like that, right? Now, some of his prophecies they prophesied didn't even fit the bill, right? Should have already happened, right? And didn't, right? But there again, that's the weird thing about prophecies, right? You don't know what exactly the person means because he's speaking in some kind of foreign language to begin with, and when you translate it, right, into English, okay, it might lose a little in the translation, and on top of that, right, it's kind of obscure, some of his visions as well. It's not clear what he means, right? Sometimes he's just talking gibberish and it doesn't even make sense in his own language, right? So be careful of that, right? Though they say some of his prophecies came true, and again, right? But yet some of them didn't yet, right? He also talks about cannibalism happening, right? And things like that, right? Well, that can happen if you go into nuclear war, right? Depending on how badly you bomb the United States to get them out of the way, right? So the target, though, has to be America. And the problem is the distance does affect how quick we can react, right? But that's what Nostradamus warns about, right? The problem is if one side has more missiles than the other side, all it takes is the right number to get through to the major cities, and that's it. All Moscow has to do is bomb 5 specific targets, right? Say Chicago, New York, LA area, San Francisco, Atlanta, New Orleans, somewhere big, right? And the missile get through, right? And we're bombed, right? That's another reason President Biden can't just, do what he wants to do to stop them from invading Ukraine either. They got the missiles, right? More missiles than us right now still, right? So you got to be careful how you handle it. And you got to try both diplomacy while Putin is running into Ukraine, though Ukraine ain't part of NATO or anything. And that's kind of the problem, too, though we want to help him and gave him some money, right? And again, right? All that's going on, too, right? We're doing what we can, right? Like I said, yeah. Yeah.